Mike Florio joining us now. The investigation over Tua re-entering Sunday's game becomes more important with what happened last night. What do we know about Sunday, Mike? And then we can get to last night.
Well, and Dan, we were tracking all of this in real time on Sunday as it was happening. When Tua came back into the game to start the third quarter, a lot of people were surprised because we saw what happened after his head hit the turf in the game against the Bills. He got up. He was wobbly. A teammate had to actually intervene and hold him up. Now, here's the issue. And the NFL was very gracious. They responded to my initial email. They sent me the concussion protocol. They answered some basic questions. But when you look at the concussion protocol, there's a major question that remains to this moment unanswered. And here's how it goes. You mentioned the fencing posture. When a player demonstrates the fencing posture, as Mike Ryan explained it, they are immediately out for the game. It's a no-go. They can't come back under any circumstances. But for gross motor instability, the wobbliness that we saw on Sunday, there's a loophole. The team physician and the independent, although not really independent of the league, independent of the team, they call it the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant. Those two individuals working together can clear the player if they determine that the gross motor instability was not neurologically caused. So that's what they did. And I've been trying to drill down on that. Hey, NFL, why did they conclude that what we saw, and you know it when you see it, we saw it and we know it, he was wobbly from hitting his head on the ground. What did these two individuals do to come to the conclusion that the gross motor instability we all saw wasn't caused by a brain injury? That's it, because that's the only way he gets back on the field. And I think that's why the NFLPA launched the investigation. That's the question that I can't get answered and needs to be answered because, Dan, he should have been not returned to the game. And then after the game, does he get cleared to play by Thursday night if he's in the concussion protocol?
No.
I don't know. But he never should have been back in that game. So something I just posted a little while ago, they need to close that loophole now. If you have gross motor instability, just like the fencing posture, you're done. There's no way back onto the field that game. That's something they need to do right now going into the games this weekend, because we may be right back in this situation with another quarterback or any other player come Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening.
If I gave you one question to anybody in this, what would be the question and who would you ask it to?
Well, see, I practiced law, so I know how to take one question and turn it into 10. There are subparts, Dan, to the question. I actually just sent a list of 9 questions to the NFL about Tua from Sunday. I'm also curious, was he examined again after the game on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, or was it just, hey, he's good to go, he's back in the game, we're not going to revisit this at all? But I'm curious about the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant, because they recognized back in 2009 or so, we can't just rely on the team doctor to make a reliable decision, because the team doctor is under the financial thumb of the team. And we've heard about that for years. The doctors do what they have to do to continue to be the team doctors. They'll eventually find a doctor that gets their players back on the field. But Dan, just because this other person isn't affiliated with the team, they're still affiliated with the league. And is it really in the league's best interest to have the best players not available for the best games? There's still a subtle bias there. It's one step removed from working for the team, but the league still wants the best players out there. The league wants maximum interest, maximum eyeballs, maximum dollars. So I'm not so sure this unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant is truly independent. And the question I have, are we at a point where there needs to be someone who is truly disconnected from the NFL? And they'll hate that. They won't want it. They want to control everything. But maybe we need somebody who's truly independent, who looks out for the best interests of the players and not the team or the broader league that wants those players on the field.
I mentioned this in the first hour, and I hope my audience is patient with me because I'm repeating some of this. Is it just a coincidence what happened on Sunday and what happened last night, that there's no connection between the two for Tua?
Well, there's two different issues here. As you said earlier, when you have one concussion, you're more susceptible to a second one. That's one thing. as we talk about long-term effects, how many concussions does a person have? What does it do to them from a cognitive standpoint when they're 50, 60, 70, 80? The other issue is far more important, and that is suffering a second concussion, a second head injury in the immediate aftermath of suffering the first one. That's how people die. That's why high school kids every year, somewhere between 10 and 15, they die because they had a head injury that was undiagnosed, and then they had a second one. And the damage to the brain can become exponential with an impaired brain that gets injured again. That's the real risk here. And that was the first thing that I was concerned about. He had a concussion Sunday, maybe. He definitely has one now. Well, if the one on Sunday was a concussion, and here's another one, he could have a very serious, if not fatal outcome. And that's the thing the NFL needs to be concerned about, especially as the NFL tries to be the platinum standard for all the lower levels of the sport to emulate. And it really hasn't worked the way the NFL would like. But the last thing the NFL can have is a serious outcome like that, where you have head injury, guys somehow back in the game, and has a second head injury and has a serious outcome. So it's not just the accumulation of concussions. It's what happens when you have a second one not long after a first one.
But you know what happens, Mike? We've been doing this a long time. It's a Friday. We're going to go into college football. We're going to go
Bright
into
shiny objects.
Yeah, the NFL and Monday Night Football. And then all of a sudden, the Dolphins are off for 10 days. You know, Patrick Mahomes does something incredible, or Lamar Jackson. You know how this works. We move on.
Best time for the NFL to have scandals is in season, because there is an endless supply of bright, shiny objects. You got Thursday, you got Sunday, you got Monday. You got Thursday, you got Sunday, you got Monday. And we do. But this is something that hopefully people will remain vigilant about. And I think that it will be a big deal. And it should be a big deal, because it defies common sense. What we saw Sunday defies common sense. And what we saw Thursday night horrified us. Even though he's fine, it still was horrifying in the moment. And I think it's time to take a step back and revisit the concussion protocol and say, is there a way to make it better? Is there a way to make the players safer? And one of the questions I have, Dan, is there a higher bar that needs to apply to players who are playing on Thursday night, whatever the injury? Is there a higher bar for clearing them? Because you've only got 3 days to recover from any injury you may have experienced on Sunday, concussion or anything else. Can you protect yourself on a football field? Can you successfully get through that game without being impaired by the injury you had on Sunday when you're playing on a short week? You know, we accept that Thursday Night Football is here to stay, and it is. But that doesn't mean there aren't ways to improve how we protect the players who are expected to play 4 days after they just finished a game.
Thank you, Mike.
Good talking to you, Dan.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live, that precedes our show on Peacock Monday through Friday.